Okay, let's go and get started. Well, welcome to this MIX06 session. I'm glad you all made the time to wake up from the, I'm sure, fun Las Vegas time you had last night and come to this session. I hope to keep you wildly entertained, more entertained hopefully than you've been at other sessions. I don't know, the other sessions have been great, I'm sure, but we're going to do a lot of interesting things in this talk. I'm going to try and spend a lot of time doing demos and kind of walking through some of the neat things we've done with ASP.NET and building a community platform, which we call Community Server. So this talk is in fact titled, Building an Interactive Community Platform with ASP.NET. It's about an application that our company Telligent builds called Community Server. And you probably have already experienced Community Server if you went out to this site, MIX06.com, which is actually built on top of Community Server. So Community Server is, probably the easiest way to explain it is it's a community management system. We think we're trying to create kind of a new genre of software applications out there, and Community Server is part of that new genre, and that is a application that brings together a lot of the common tools that you need for creating a community application. So a place where people want to come, interact, share, and meet new people, in fact. Let's come back here, some of the housekeeping items. So my name's Rob Howard. I'll be your host and tour guide for this wonderful hour and 15-minute session on Community Server. I've got my email address up here. It's rhoward@telligent.com. If you have any feedback on the slides, on the presentation, on the demos, any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. I'd love to hear the feedback. I love hearing from people to see what they think and how we can improve and what ideas they might have about what we've shown. Community Server, so what we're going to be walking through today, again, is a community management system. The website address is communityserver.org. I'll actually be demoing that site today to show off some of the functionality. And then Telligent, the company that is behind Community Server and makes the platform, is www.telligent.com. So you can go to either of those sites and learn more. Community Server is where I'd recommend starting, though. So let's talk a little bit about community. So what does community mean? I used to work at Microsoft, and one of the things that I had the opportunity to do while I was at Microsoft was build a lot of community applications. And one of the areas that I started on was the ASP.NET website. So if you're familiar at all or worked at all with ASP.NET, back in the day, one of the first community applications I had the opportunity to work on was this site, the www.asp.net site. And what we kind of learned during the creation of this application was that we had a wide variety of customer audiences. It turned out we had actually 3 big buckets of customer audiences. Or customer communities. We had the community that wanted to interact on the web, so forums, web discussions, they wanted to share stuff and post information back and forth with one another. We had email lists where individuals would send emails to each other through a common email list name, and other people could receive that, read it, and reply to it. And it'd be all done through Outlook or Hotmail or Yahoo Mail or whatever else. And the third and last one was newsgroups. Newsgroups have been around for quite some time now, where you use a newsreader like Outlook Express to connect to a news server where you can interact in threaded discussions. And we built the ASP.NET website really targeting the web-based community, because, hey, that's what ASP.NET was all about. But over time, what we really came to learn was that communities consisted of a lot of things other than just the application. Communities were about people. Like, how do you connect individuals with one another? A great example of some of the success that you see with community-based applications is MySpace. I mean, they were up on the keynote talking about all the stuff they're doing to allow people to connect with one another, share information, share ideas, and really personalize their application. Other aspects of communities include blogs. So blogs allow for people to really have an easy way to publish on the web. I can remember back in probably the early 90s when I first started writing web apps, one of the early apps I wrote was a CGI-based application on a Unix box, which I haven't written code on Unix in years now. But what it was a simple web publishing system. Basically presented the user with a form, they filled out some information, and it would create a website for them. And what we kind of slowly discovered is that people wanted the ability to easily publish content to the web without having to learn all the complex technologies behind the scenes. So blogs really kind of fulfilled a lot of that vision. I think blogs really You see it now, how people use blogs for personal publishing, and it just makes sense. You're kind of like, why didn't someone just think of this sooner? Forums for web-based discussions, files for sharing files. Everyone's familiar with download.com. Email is a great platform. When I look at the tools that I use on my laptop, Outlook is probably one of the most commonly used tools next to my web browser. But it's also pretty underutilized, meaning I feel like there's a lot more that can be done with it. Other aspects of community, photos, feeds or RSS, the ability to kind of reshare or resyndicate that information. Newsgroups, again. Even though newsgroups are really more technology-centric, there's still some interesting things that can be done with newsgroups today. Chats, comments, profiles, you name it. So there's a lot of aspects of community. And one of the things that we discovered about 4 years ago, I'd say, is that to build an application that brought a lot of these technologies and pieces together was really, really difficult. You had to go find a good blogging system. You had to go find a good forum system. You had to go find a good file sharing system. You had to go find a good email platform. You had to go find a good news server. Oh, then you had to write all the code to kind of wire up everything together. And oh, guess what? Part of your system's going to run on Linux. Part of your system's going to run on Windows. It became really, really difficult. So part of what our vision was with Community Server, what we're going to walk through today, was to really build one integrated platform. And so I've got the purple cow here. So I don't know if you've heard Seth Godwin speak, but he oftentimes talks about the example of, hey, you're driving in a car, you're going through the countryside, you're looking out the window, you see cows everywhere. No big deal. It's common to see blogging systems today. It's common to see web applications today that support forums. It's common to see email tools. What's uncommon is to find an integrated platform that brings it all together. And that's what we've tried to do. We've built that platform on top of ASP.NET. I'll walk you through some of the architecture stuff in a moment. But first, I thought we'd really do a tour of what's in Community Server. So let's just get started. So I'm going to go over here, and I've got the web browser open. I'm using IE7, obviously. And I've gone to communityserver.org. And I'm not signed in yet. But I'm just going to kind of walk through all the different aspects of what's in here. So the first aspect is we've got, obviously, a landing page with some content on it. And I'm not signed in yet, but I will sign in a minute. And you can see we've got, obviously, some content areas, some what I would call almost web parts or lists that are shown on the side. We've got some video support and some other interesting things happening. If I scroll back up to the top and go over to blogs, we've got a nice, rich, aggregate blogging UI. We're doing some cool stuff with Ajax that I'll be showing a little bit later. But this is where we start rolling up some of the interesting blog information. And so this feature is actually used on some of the larger sites we run, like blogs.msdn.com, where we actually bring together about 3,000 different bloggers into one UI and really roll them up on this aggregate page. And we're going to do some more interesting things with this in our next version, I think. But right now, this is really just an easy publishing system that allows the newest posts that are posted into a blog to get rolled right onto the top of the page. So I can, of course, then view information like, hey, what's most commented on? So what's popular? We're really discovering more and more what people are looking for when they come to these types of applications is they want to find out, what are my friends looking at? What are other people finding useful that I can go then dig in and find useful as well or reuse for my application? We can also show you most viewed as well as posts by group, so we allow grouping. And then we do some nice things on the left-hand side where we try to lift out some interesting information like, how many comments are there? Is there a rating? How many times has this particular post been viewed? And then, of course, you can drill down into an individual blog and read information that's posted. And so from an individual blog point of view, you can read blog entries. You can sort by post calendar. You get all the typical things that you expect to find in a blogging application. And in a moment, when I sign in as a site manager, I'll show you some of the more interesting aspects of this. But we've got categories, and I'm going to show you tags in a minute as well. And of course, we support full RSS for all this too. On the forum side, so on the discussion side, really providing a rich way where people can interact with one another. It's funny, we do a lot of calls with prospective customers, and what they come to us with and they describe, they say, hey, we want a blogging system. And we listen to what they describe, and what they really describe is a discussion system where people can post and share information. So for example, again, you have a an aggregate page that rolls up a lot of the common information, active posts, unanswered posts, most active users. And then I can drill into a particular area. Let's pick discussions. And begin reading information. And I can see a threaded view here where, again, I get an aggregate view of all the posts in a particular forum. I can then even drill in further or look at user profiles from here or look at ratings on different posts. We can drill in further and view, for example, let's pick a good one. No profile data. So this is some of our technical questions. But again, drilling in and getting a different view of the content that's on there, seeing how fresh it is, and seeing some other information about it as well. We assign points to posts so you can actually get credits for how you participate in the system. Let me go ahead and sign in at this point and show you something else, though. So I'll sign in as a user. So we've also done some really cool things that allow the users to interact more richly with the application. So for example, enabling email subscriptions. So you can see some AJAX usage there, where a user is simply going to go through the app and, oh, I want to enable email subscriptions for this application. Rather than doing like a full post back where you have to send the entire page back to the server to refresh data or reset data, we simply click on a button, make a little AJAX call, asynchronous call back to the server, set the email subscriptions to true. Now when anyone replies to this topic, I get an email in my inbox telling me that I received a reply. I can also do things like change view. Come in here and do like a threaded view. So if you're used to a newsgroup style view, you can change the UI to kind of match the type of UI that you're most commonly familiar with. And again, come in and just view the data differently. So there's some interesting ways we can cut and sort the data. Let's go back up here. Some of the other kind of neat things to show off here real quickly that we've done with the ASP.NET platform is built in like full moderation capabilities. So if we went to another site like forums.asp.net, a common piece of functionality that you get in a rich community application is the ability to moderate users and control the content that comes into your site. So for example, if I sign into this application, I'm actually a moderator of the app, and I can come up here and click Moderate and actually view all the posts that are awaiting approval in the system. I can then come in and review individual messages. So for example, I can go to the security forum, moderate content, review information. And again, this is a place where we're using AJAX again, where I can quickly kind of come through here, look at a post, say, yeah, this makes sense, I'm going to approve it. And it will actually approve the message and refresh the screen. I can also come in and do approve and view, delete messages, split messages, edit users, unmoderate users, all the kind of common tasks you'd expect to do in a community application where you're actually managing the users of the app in the system. Let's go back here. So in addition to forums, which I'll show a little bit more of later, we also have some photo gallery support. So allowing users to post and share photos within the system. I can click on, for example, a particular user's gallery and publish and share photos. And so here are some of the photos that I've published. So for example, from a recent user group event that we participated in. And again, providing some of the common elements that you start seeing across the application. So instead of building, for example, a ratings control for a photo application one time, we build a ratings control and can use it multiple times throughout the application. And as you'll see in a moment when I start talking about the architecture, the way we've divided this up using ASP.NET is we've made all of these things server controls. So it makes them really, really easy to reuse across this platform. And so we can do some nice things. I'm not showing it here, but we can also do, for example, watermarking across photos. So a lot of the common tools you expect to have in an application such as this are just simply built in. Files. So also some great file support. The file support is really meant to do something similar. I'm getting some clipping because I've made the screen small, but the file support is really meant to allow users to publish and share files in the system. And when I show you the back end later, you actually have a lot of control over permissions for how that file sharing is done. But again, for example, we can publish all of our files for community server, all the downloads. And you can see we're using some really rich server controls here. And these are actually built by one of our partners, Component Art. And they've built some really slick server controls for enabling some of this kind of rich functionality. And I'll be showing some more of it in a little while. But I come in here to releases and find, oh, here's the community server 2.0 MSI file. I can click into that. And again, you see some of the common elements like ratings. If I scroll down, you'll see things like comments. Again, using a lot of the same familiar kind of concepts that you'd see in blogs. And I'm signed in as an admin, so I'm seeing some administrative tools pop up here as well, like remove this comment. But using some of this common community experience across the entire system rather than just a blogging app or just a file application. So additionally, we've got some cool things we've done with RSS. I'll be showing some more of this, again, later during the course of the presentation. But we've built an RSS reader into the app as well. And we've done some really neat things that you can do with this. So for example, I can come into my feeds. I can pick a feed like CNN.com and actually browse and read the RSS content from CNN.com. I can also add MSNBC.com to the same folder and then mash up that content together and put it in one view. I can then even take that content that I've created and create a new custom RSS feed for it. So again, one of the things that we're trying to do with Community Server is enable people to quickly build what we're calling, or what most people are calling, these mashup sites. We're taking a lot of interesting content from across the web, bringing it together in one location, and then possibly resyndicating or republishing it. And we've done some interesting things with RSS. We actually have something we call secure RSS. So we can actually track per user the RSS feeds that are being subscribed to. And again, we'll come back to this in a little while and show some more examples of that. We've also got a roller. And this is what I think most people would commonly refer to as as kind of a mashup tool. The reason we built this is for sites like Microsoft's blogging site, blogs.msdn.com. You've got lots of great bloggers out there. So if I go to blogs.msdn.com, there's almost 3,000 bloggers that blog on this site. But yet some of the most popular bloggers for Microsoft don't blog on this site. Robert Scoble doesn't blog on this site. Scott Guthrie doesn't blog on this site. He actually blogs over on another site, weblogs.asp.net. Don Box doesn't blog on this site. But at the same time, what we're discovering is that users really do want to find all of the content in one location. So with some of the roller functionality that we've built, that we've added in, you could actually take bloggers or RSS content from a variety of locations and easily kind of mash them up together into one common feed. And that's what we've done here. So we've got a lot of the intelligent bloggers that participate on the development team, where we actually take all of their feeds, aggregate them together, and bring them into this common blog role. And from here, I can come in and, here's a blog entry by Scott Watermazik, who leads the community server team, and clicking on his site takes me off to his blog, where he's done a blog entry about Code Better that just launched on Community Server 2.0. So, some kind of cool things happening there. All right, let's get back to the home. So that's kind of a quick overview. And what I thought I'd talk about next is just real briefly talk about some of the technology behind the scenes before we kind of dive into some specific areas. A lot of our competitors aren't building on ASP.NET. It's just a fact. A lot of the platforms, when you look at the other people that are kind of in this space, TypePad would probably come to mind, Blogger, there's a lot of other folks, PHPBB for form solution, a lot of the kind of siloed applications. They're building on apps like PHP, or they're building on systems like PHPBB, PHP and MySQL, I'm sorry. And one of the things that we've done as an organization is we've made the decision to build on top of Microsoft's platform. And we have obviously a lot of experience and background with Microsoft's platform, but it just makes sense for us. They're doing some really innovative things when it comes to RSS. They're doing some really innovative things when it comes to Ajax, and building a great foundation for us to build on. So in many ways, it's the super glue that we use to build our application. It's what we depend upon. And the way we've been able to structure our application in a very modular way using ASP.NET and the .NET framework makes it really easy for us to innovate on the platform very quickly. So if you look at how Community Server is structured architecturally, we've got a database repository, so we're completely database driven. We actually use SQL Server as our main data store. Community Server as an application is designed using a provider model design pattern. And what that means is that I can actually unplug SQL Server as my data store and plug in any other data store. I could use a web services data store. I could use a Oracle data store. I could use a file system data store. But yet what we found is that we have yet to even try to do that from a technology company side, just because it hasn't made any sense for us. SQL Server has been such a phenomenal platform for us. For example, we've actually been able to, we're running blogs.msdn.com, which does, I forget the traffic it does, but it's doing terabytes of traffic a day on 2 web servers and 1 database server. So millions and millions of impressions per day, and the SQL server is barely working behind the scenes. So yeah, we've got a pretty beefy SQL box, I won't lie to you, but it is barely working. I mean, it's running at like 20, 30% utilization. So when you look at the SQL Server structure, the way we've designed it, it's using stored procedures. It's a lot of kind of hand coding. We're looking at, in a future version, at doing a lot of code generation, looking at some of the cool new code generation tools that are coming out that would allow us to really code gen a lot of our data access layer back to SQL Server, back to the database. It's going to help abstract the application a little more, but right now we've got a pretty abstracted app. We talk the entire database through stored procedures. If you then look at the core services for Community Server, we've done some pretty cool things. We've got this abstract data tier, which we've called the provider design pattern, that we actually used. Well, when I was on the ASP.NET team, that was one of the features that I designed that actually went into ASP.NET 2.0. That now you see in things like membership, personalization, role management. In fact, when I was on the team, I used what became Community Server, at least the forums portion, to prototype a lot of those features. So you'll probably see a lot of commonality from a technology point of view in Community Server and ASP.NET 2.0. From the business logic side, again, some more abstraction there. We've got profile. We've done a lot of work with localization. We looked long and hard at the localization functionality that existed in .NET 1.1, which used, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it used a resx file format. And to actually build a localized version of your app, you have to recompile your code. And that didn't make a lot of sense for us to do. We wanted something that allowed people to easily kind of add localization information or change localization information on the fly. So what we did is we built an XML-based localization system. And it turns out that's almost identical to what ASP.NET 2.0 is using now as well, where your localization files are really disconnected from your assemblies. You don't have to compile them together. We also did some pretty cool things with what we're calling background services. When you're writing a web application, one of the big challenges is you've got a lot of processing you have to do in the background. A lot of kind of tasks like reporting, sending emails, indexing content, searching information that needs to happen, but you really don't want to couple that work with a request thread, for example. So when a request comes into your app, you don't want to force the user who's making that request to also go send all your emails because they just happen to hit at the right time. So one of the neat things we did is we created this service called Background Services. And it actually uses the thread pools from the ASP.NET app that it's running in, and it can spin up a new thread behind the scenes and do things like send email or index content or process messages. I'll give you an example of why this was necessary. When we were first writing the app, one of the scalability challenges we ran into was we found once we hit a certain threshold of users where we were sending out emails, the way SMTP sends emails, it would send them serially. And what would happen would be is that a certain request would come in, and the emails would have to get sent, and that request would sometimes stall out because it was just sitting there sending emails, and you couldn't actually serve the original request that came in. So this background services technique, we can actually send the emails separately from all the requests, meaning that we'll dedicate one thread in the system just to sending emails, just to searching, and a variety of other tasks that I'll walk through later, while the rest of the threads in the app can be completely dedicated to servicing requests. And I think that's a great example of one of the reasons why we're able to run a site like blogs.msdn.com on 2 web servers. I mean, a very, very high traffic site with just a small number of servers. From the web gateway side, you'll notice I'm using the term gateway, and I think that'll become more apparent in just a second why we're terming it gateway. But from the web gateway point of view, meaning how we access the app from a web application, the way the presentation is all done, it's all done through server controls. So we've taken the ASP.NET development model of writing these object-oriented classes, basically, that can be represented as XML tags and pages. So from a design point of view, it's very easy for me to reach into a page in ASP.NET and not have to have any code associated with it. Have all that code encapsulated in a tag. If you're familiar at all with Cold Fusion, it kind of looks similar to how that used to work as well. So we encapsulate all the web functionality, all the rendering inside of server controls. There's about 80 plus server controls. I think there's actually more by now. There's probably well over 200, I'd say. It also supports our skinning model. So we have a pretty neat skinning model that we've been using for about the last 4 years. Pretty complex, but it gives developers it gives designers a high degree of control over the UI. So for example, using the skinning model, I can come in and I can build a site like this. So without making any code changes, I can come in and build a site like this. It comes up. So another CUNY server site. I can come in and build a site like, so it's not rendering some stuff, gearlog.com. So here's a Ziff Davis site. So again, allowing the designer to really have a lot of creative freedom for how the UI is going to be presented to the user without necessarily having to worry themselves about ASP.NET or the .NET platform at all. There's some exposure to server controls there, but if you were to look at, for example, a page, and let's just come back here. From a design point of view, I'll go to localhost CS, and let's go to the sign-in page. And so here's an example of the login page, and maybe I want to customize this. Maybe I want to kind of change the layout of some of this information. So one of the nice things I can come in and do is go into the app, come in here into the web application, go into the themes folder, default, skins. So all the content is represented as a skin file. So here's the login skin. We'll let that open up. And this skin represents the login UI. And you can see it's saying some resource information because it's all localizable. But I can come in from a design point of view now and say, oh, I'm going to put this into HTML mode. And yes, there are some tags at the top. And I will make, let me just go ahead and state, we will make no claims whatsoever that we have perfect HTML. It's something we're working on. We hired a full-time kind of HTML or XHTML guru about 4 days ago. And one of the plans that we have is a pretty thorough rewrite of a lot of the HTML that we generate to make it XHTML compliant. So we're using tables here, so not perfect, I realize that. But you can see there's no code. So we do use server controls. So you can see a server control here, for example. Here's a resource label for, hey, this is going to render out the login password. So I can go into an XML file and find the resource name for login password. And if I want to create a French version, I can create a French version of this resource file and just change the string. But at the same time, I can come in and do things like, if I want to add some text here, there we go. And so I can edit those files really easily without having to worry at all about the application that drives it behind the scenes. So at the same time, I can come in and go in and say if I'm a developer and I want to actually modify the code, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, so we'll come back to this. But if I come over here to the, let me find it real quickly, login view control, this is actually the the server control code behind the scenes that drives that UI file. So what's nice about that is for a developer, there's a very nice separation between the design elements of the application and the source elements of the application. So we'll come back to that in a little later. All right, so we talked a little bit about the rendering. There's obviously an RSS stack built in there as well. The entire application has RSS through and through, which I'll show you some examples of in a little while. We also have pluggable gateways. And you probably recall at the beginning I mentioned, oh, we have, when you think of a community encompasses a lot more than just a web application. So our vision for Community Server is really to build a platform that enabled a lot of different ways to interact with the community. And really to take technology out of the picture in the sense of, instead of making the community divided by technology, email, news groups, web, let's make the technology a facilitator of the community. So now we've got gateways that allow you to use email to participate in the forum. So I can use a forum just like I would a distribution list. I can plug it into Microsoft's Exchange server, or I can run it standalone. Meaning that when someone posts a message to a forum, I get an email in my inbox. I can optionally get an email in my inbox. I can read that email. I can reply to it. I can be on an airplane where I have no connectivity, or I guess pretty soon limited connectivity. I can reply to it. And when I land, I find the wireless network again, and it sends off that email and makes a post back into the forum. So it's a pretty nice way that all of a sudden I can bridge the gaps of technology from a community point of view. Same thing with news servers. Community Server actually supports a news server gateway. So I can open up a tool like Outlook Express and read and interact with a Community Server application. I'll show an example of both of these a little bit later. We also use the email gateway for blogging, obviously. You can blog by email, blog off your phone. One of the demos I was going to show, I couldn't get it working in time, but I was going to basically get my camera phone out, take a picture of the audience, and blog about it on stage. And I just didn't get a chance to get it working, but that's what the email gateway allows. You could walk around, at a party, clicking photos, sending emails, doing whatever you want. Makes it really easy. So other services sit on top of that. There's obviously other tools, utilities, and data mining options that you can go against the data repository for and pull out and extract useful information. Don't have any examples of those two items I'll be showing today. But that's kind of a broad overview of the architecture. It's designed to be very pluggable, very extensible. So I showed some of the code for the application already. But just to kind of briefly walk through it again, we published the core source code for Community Server. We actually find that we can get between 400 to 800 downloads a day. Out of all those downloads, the number of people that actually grab our source code is less than about 2% usually. So we're finding that even though we publish the source code and make it available, it's typically only the developers that are interested in seeing how we've done something so they can mirror functionality in their applications. We actually encourage most of our customers that use Community Server not to modify the source code. Instead, to work with us, obviously, to get those changes back into the code control. But as you can see here, it's a pretty large application. There's a member role project. So we've got a completely abstracted membership management system built and modeled on top of the ASP.NET 2.0 membership management system for doing all the role management, all the user management, all the permissions management, all the sign-on management. We've got a reporting project that we're starting to build out now that has all the reports in it for how Community Server is performing, what type of exceptions have occurred in the application, all kinds of internal reporting on usage by users, download reports, user counts, all kinds of interesting information. We'll show some of those in a little while. We've got another project that specifically deals with spam. I'm going to be showing off this particular feature. I'm not going to walk through this code, but we've got a pretty comprehensive anti-spam system that's built into Community Server. We've built it after years and years of experience of running some pretty visible blogging sites like blogs.msd.com and weblogs.asp.net, and have used a lot of that knowledge that we've gained over the past 4 or 5 years to build a pretty comprehensive anti-spam system. We'll show that off again in a little while. So there's also the blogging application. One of the really good things to remember about Community Server is it's a community platform, meaning it's not just, you don't have to use everything that exists. For example, if we were to go over to forums.xbox.com, they don't use blogs, they don't use photo galleries, they don't use files. All these are for forums. So you can turn off and only use the features that you want. So from a project point of view, the application is compiled as one application, but from a functional point of view, you can use just the pieces that you need. So obviously the blogging functionality, I'm not going to go into all of this. Components, so all of the kind of the business tier objects, all of the AJAX functionality, all of the common behaviors that are shared throughout the application, all kinds of modules and handlers for doing a variety of things, all within here. All the server controls. So I can just kind of quickly go through and expand some of these, and you can see just how many server controls there are. There's a lot of server controls we've built in the system. We've tried to encapsulate a large majority of the functionality into server controls so that you can reuse them within Community Server. So there's a lot, obviously. Those are all class files. A lot there. Let's clap some of those. I'm not going to go through all this. We've got the Forums app, we've got a web app, we've got an admin app, we've got a Files app. I mean, there's a whole bunch of pieces of functionality in there. What you'll find, though, is that since they're one application, they'll share a lot of common elements. So, for example, Ink. We have Ink support in Community Server. If you're using a tablet PC and you want to blog in Ink, hey, guess what? You can blog in Ink. We added that functionality in there. But since we added it for blogging, it was really easy to also add it for forums. It was also really easy to add it for some of the other areas. And then later on, in our next version, we can do interesting things like, oh, let's add Ink support to photos so that I can take a photo. So I can go to an event like this. I already changed the screen already, but you remember that photo I pulled up earlier where I had a bunch of people that attended a talk I gave? It'd be really cool if I could take out my tablet PC and start circling people and saying, hey, here's Jim. You know, he attended the event. I've known him for 3 years. Oh, here's Scott over here. And you can kind of do some neat things with Ink that way. We haven't done that yet, but it's a lot easier for us to do it now than it would have been had we had to build everything just for a photo application. All right. Let's talk a little bit about AJAX. AJAX is not just for cleaning. No, I'm just kidding. I had a heck of a time finding a photo of AJAX. There's lots of little photos, but apparently AJAX as a brand is only being used in Europe now. So I could only find this European brand of what looks like AJAX detergent for my talk. But I wanted to show you a little bit of how we're using AJAX within Community Server. I think we've got some pretty interesting uses of it. A lot of people are today searching for, hey, how do I use AJAX in my application? What are the different ways? You know, Scott Guthrie got up and showed some cool uses of how to AJAX enable an existing application in his keynote. But we've actually been trying to find some interesting ways to use it that instead of being technology-wise interesting to us, because we're just geeks and we like to implement the stuff, really more user-friendly options that make it easier for users to actually use the application. So I'll just show some examples of that. So the first example we'll give you is we'll go over to forums.asp.net, and I'll sign out of it. And go back to forums. And what you'll see is there are a lot of forums. There's about 80 of them. Actually, I think there's more now. But you can see there's a lot. And there's a good reason for there being a lot. It gives people a great way to kind of categorize the information they're looking for and to know right where to go when they want to ask a question. The problem we found is, wow, this page gets expensive to render, A. And B, it can be, frankly, overwhelming. We're actually looking at some new kind of design techniques to rethink how we lay out this type of content that we're going to roll out probably before the end of the year. But right now, I mean, there's just a lot of information there. What we found, and what I found just from someone who uses these apps, is that I really don't use all the forums. There's about 10 or 15 that I really care about and want to interact with. So how can we provide the user with some good tools so they can control what they're looking at, but at the same time, get some wins in the application so that I don't have to re-render all the content and just turn it off with DHTML or something. So when I'm signed in as a user, so I'll come back and sign in. So you'll notice we do these collapsing panels over here, and I'm going to expand a couple just so you can see. And that's actually using AJAX as well. So it's actually pulling from the server and repopulating these areas. which is great because when they're collapsed, we try to encourage our users obviously to collapse them when they can, but when they collapse them, it means when we have to serve the content from the server, it reduces the amount of data that we have to actually send back over the wire, which just makes everyone happier because the pages render faster, and then we pay less for the bandwidth. But the other thing we have is we have the ability to fully personalize the application. So if I expand general ASP.NET, and I click on this personalize button, that actually does do a postback, but I can put the app into personalization mode. And what personalization mode essentially does is you can see that now there's some options that say displayed, yes. There's actually a new column that was added that just says displayed. And what I can actually do, and it's using Ajax, is I can come in here and say, you know what, I really don't care about the frequently asked questions. I don't really read that. I'll set that to no. Getting started, I'm not really reading that anymore. We'll set that to no. Installation and setup, yeah, I read that. Web forms, no, not really anymore. And I can easily change those options without having to force the user to do a complete postback, which would, of course, send all this data back to the server and then send all the data back to the client again just to simply change one little state item. So in addition to supporting that, I can also globally come in and turn off an entire forum group. So if I don't want to even see the general ASP.NET group, I come over here and just say displayed, no, and return to personalized view, and it just doesn't even display it anymore. So you'll see that forum group was simply removed from the UI. The content's still there. When I search for it, I can still find the information. If I have the URL, I can still browse to it, meaning if someone gives me a link to click on, and I click on that URL and it takes me into a forum or topic that was in that area, I can still get to it, but it's just not part of my main display now. Some interesting things we're doing with Ajax there. Let's go over here. I'm going to turn this back on before I forget about it. One of the other interesting things we're doing that is one of my kind of favorite features is, let's sign on. There we go. So I'm signed in as an admin now into this community server application that's running locally. One of the kind of features that we saw a lot of people running into is that when you wanted to manage some of the content in the site, typically one of the problems you'd have is that, oh, I want to change the title of my app. I have to go in and dig into some control panel somewhere that's buried within some administrative application. All I really care about doing is changing the title of my site. We've tried to make that really easy. So for example, I want to change the title of the site. I can say, my MIX06 demo. And that's using Ajax. That's actually putting it's using some JavaScript to put a div tag into edit mode. It allows me to edit the content within that div tag, and then when the mouse cursor moves off that div tag, it actually makes an Ajax call back to the server to change the actual title of that application. So when I'm logged in as an administrator, typically, obviously I wouldn't be logged in always as an administrator, but when I'm logged in as an admin, I want to come and change some stuff. It makes it really, really easy to go in and change some of the common items. So if I wanted to go in and, I don't have it enabled here, but I could do the same thing on communityserver.org, where if I'm logged in, I can go over to the forums. And if I, by chance, decide, oh, you know what? I'm going to drill into the blogs forum and go, blogs really isn't a good name for this. I want to call it blog discussions here. Oh, I just actually changed it on the live site, so I'm going to change it back. But it's kind of cool, and I get the same thing on the description. So from a usability point of view, these are some of the things that we've been trying to think about with Ajax. We've done some other cool things that I'll show you. We've actually, so with one of the partners we're working with, Component Art, they've done some really innovative things with Ajax. They're really ahead of the curve there. And we're using a lot of their server controls to do some neat things as well that's using Ajax. So you'll see a lot of the kind of the tree controls, a lot of the other server controls that we use from them use Ajax to enable a lot of neat functionality. If I go into blogs, for example, I can drill in, and some of the It's not enabled here, but if I had comments enabled, I could turn off my subscriptions to comments through Ajax as well. So again, really just looking for some natural ways to enable users to interact with the system without having to force them through postbacks. So a great example here would be most comments. If I want to scroll through those, I'll click Next, and I can just kind of browse through that content. And again, what's nice about this is we can build this one time and reuse these kind of rich Ajax controls in a variety of locations throughout the application. And there's a lot of other uses here of where we're using it. You know, there's some cool kind of other stuff we've done with content management where I can kind of come in and say I want to, you know, edit this content here. It's not necessarily using Ajax, but it's doing some interesting client-side stuff to allow me to put this content into edit mode without having to necessarily do a full page postback every time I edit the content. So I can come in and edit the HTML here, view the content in here in a rich WYSIWYG editor, and when I'm done editing it, kind of close it back out. So again, I see a lot of that only when I'm an administrator of the system. Okay. So tags, we've had a long history with tags and categorization and really how we identify and move content around within the platform. We've had the unique ability to really manage a lot of interesting content, and we started playing around with categories a long time ago, and we're actually moving more and more towards tagging now. Of course, is what most people will expect. And so I just wanted to show off some of the stuff we've done with tagging. So previously it was all about categories. We'd use a forced kind of hierarchy of categorization. And what a lot of our users liked about that was it was logical, meaning that, yeah, you know, item B belonged under item A, and item C belonged as a child of item B. But what we're finding more and more, and what we've actually done with our latest version of our platform that we haven't released yet, is that we're finding that users tend to want to view content in a non-linear fashion, meaning that there's lots and lots of categories, but that everyone's interpretation of the hierarchy is unique. Meaning my interpretation of the hierarchy of how I'm going to navigate my categories is different from your interpretation. And I'll show some examples of what I mean in just a second. So some of the basic stuff we've done with tagging now is we can go out to blogs.misting.com, and we took all the categorizations that a lot of the bloggers used for their posts and added a blog by category. So we bring up a nice tag cloud. And we show you, hey, here all, not all, this is like the top 50 or so, most popular categories or tags that users are tagging their content with. And then I can say, oh, I'm interested in .NET. I'm going to click on .NET. It has 39 entries in it. And then actually see the entries in the .NET category. Pull up. But what we found was, so while tagging made sense from that point of view, it also made sense from the point of view that, hey, there's more here than just a flat category system or a flat tag system. What we really wanted to enable was a way that a user could kind of drill through the categories that they find interesting or the tags that they find interesting and apply those across the application. So what we've done in our 2.1 platform that we haven't made public yet, and I think we're actually showing here for the first time, this is actually the TechNet blogs database. So I can click on blogs here and let that app load up. And it's got all the data from the TechNet blogs, and using kind of the default community server UI, I can kind of scroll through that information. So it's a snapshot of this content. So obviously we're using a different theme for it, a different skin for it. Oops, sorry about that. But what we did was we took tags and made them ubiquitous across community servers. So now you can tag forums, you can tag blogs, you can tag photos, you can tag anything. And then we took the tag cloud and we allowed you not only to browse by tag, so there's obviously some cleanup that I have to do on some of these tag names because they're originally categories, but I can then pick a group, like, oh, I'm going to pick IT Pro Resources, which has 314 entries in it. And then it's going to show me the posts that it found across blogs, forums, photos, files, anything else that was tagged with that keyword. But it's also going to show me, I think this is kind of one of the things we're doing neat here, it's also going to do a cross-section and say everything, here's all the items that were tagged with IT Pro resources, but here's other common tags those items share, or here's other tags that are available from the items you selected. So out of IT Pro resources, I can see that there were also 56 items that were tagged as beta. And from beta, there were 9 items that were tagged as Windows Vista. And from Windows Vista, there were 5 items that were tagged as news. And from that, there was 1 item tagged as fun stuff. So here's someone that tagged their item as IT Pro resources, beta, Windows Vista, news, fun stuff. But what if that's not how I view the information? What if instead I go, oh, I'm going to go into IT Pro resources, and I'm going to go fun stuff first. And then I'm going to select, I forget all the different tags I was using, Microsoft resources, so Windows Vista, and news. So there's a completely different way of getting the same information. Obviously, I didn't get back to the same way, it's the same exact data, but I could have, as I think you can see. But it allows me to navigate this content in a nonlinear manner. So the way you think of a categorization of content is completely different from the way I might want to categorize and find my information. So this is a really unique way of doing it, and we're pretty excited about how we've implemented tagging. We'll be rolling this out into some of our sites within the next couple months. And again, the cool thing is now that we've implemented tagging for this area, tags also work across forums and photos and files and everything else. So you can, from a very kind of high up point of view, say, hey, I'm interested in Windows Vista, and get blog posts, get discussions, and maybe even get some files about Windows Vista that you can download from the system. And you can kind of keep cutting and slicing the information. Video support. We've done a lot of work with video support for Community Server. Video blogging is becoming more and more prevalent, as we've seen. We've actually seen a huge uptake on the ASP.NET website ever since the team started adding videos to the site. So we've built in some great video support into Community Server. So for example, one of our developers put together a video for, I can show you one of ours actually. So let's go into blogs. And we'll pick one of the videos. So dealing with spam. Let's look at blogging by email. And so we'll embed a video within here. And this is just a Flash movie. I can just click play. I upload the Flash movie to the server.
In this video, we're going to show you how you can post to your blog using email.
Does the voice sound familiar at all? Yeah. So we're not going to listen to that because I hate hearing myself talk. So you can see it's pretty easy to embed videos. We've got a lot of different ways to support video embedding. But one of the neat things we've done with how we embed them is I can click on like edit this post. And I'll go back into the control panel for editing the content now. And the way I actually do the embedding of the video is through a tagging system. So I can go through and here's my tag for my video. And what this actually is saying is, hey, this is using a Camtasia player. It's in the tips and tricks directory. The file is called 2-email-2-blog. And then I specify the dimensions of the video that I want. We can make this look a lot prettier, obviously, and we're going to, I think. But from a usability point of view, it's really easy for me to just grab and copy this tag. And I can post it in a forum. I can post it in a blog. I can post it anywhere. I can post it in comments. You can do a lot of interesting things with it. And we actually have modules that process post entries that know how to look for these tags and do interesting things with them. So for example, I could put one of the unique things we've done is we've got other tags we can use where I can do things like, hey, if you're interested in searching on installing Community Server, we can do search Community Server, something like that. And what that will do, and I don't think this is enabled on this site, but what it will do is every time that post gets rendered, it will dynamically embed the top 10 search results for the terms community and server. So there's some kind of neat rendering things you can do there. All right, moving right along. Search. We've done a lot of work in search on the application. Search is by far the most difficult problem to solve. We spent, about 18 months rewriting a search system for community server the first time, only to find that from a scale point of view, it would only scale to about 350,000 records. Meaning that once we crossed about 350,000 records, storing a search index inside of SQL Server just really no longer worked. And there were a lot of interesting things we wanted to do with search as it relates to RSS and kind of cutting the data. So we actually went ahead and implemented 2 search systems now. So we have kind of what we call our basic search, which is just included out of the box. And we have something called our enterprise search, which is based off of Lucene. So it uses a file index system to actually build up an index of all the content in your system. It honors all the permissions in Community Server. So Community Server supports all kinds of permissions to control what users can and can't see. So our search index honors that. But we're now able to do some really cool things with it. So for example, if I go into search, I can go to communityserver.org. And from a search point of view, I can type in search content from anywhere, and I can say, hey, I'm interested in installation, and execute a search. And it'll go through, find the most relevant entry based on impressions and some other algorithm information about what content is most likely to match my request. So here's a post on installation for one of our hosters, GoDaddy. So GoDaddy deploys Community Server for their customers. And it gives me back some search results and highlights items for me. And so I was able to find 1,595 items in 1.3 seconds. So I can say installation, GoDaddy, Community Server, and kind of filter that content down even further. And so it's smart enough to start, now it's showing page 1 of 2. And in this case, it's showing both entries are from a forum. But when I'm using this generic search UI here, it's actually searching across forums, files, photos, blogs, so any blog comments or blog entries, any on files. One of the things we also now support is it'll search Word documents or Excel files or PDFs, so it can actually reach into those files and grab other interesting information out. You can also go to more search options and specify other information about how I want to search, like, oh, do I want to search by date? Do I want to search by user? How am I going to search for the content that I'm looking for? But that's not really what I wanted to show. What I was going to show you was one of the cool things we've done with RSS when it relates to search. So if, for example, I'm interested in anything that relates to installation, and let's actually look at Community Server. Let's just drop GoDaddy. So here's one of 28 records. And of course, we'll support paging at the bottom, so I can page through those items. But the interesting thing that we've done here is we've actually hooked up RSS to all the search results. So anything that I search for, I can actually also build a custom RSS feed for. So I can click on this RSS available button, and this will take me to a nicely formatted page. It just tells me, hey, search results for Community Server, blah, blah, blah. I can copy this URL out and paste it in any RSS reader now and reuse it. So for example, I could copy it and go back to the built-in RSS reader that we have in Community Server. Go over to My Feeds and say New Folder, MIX06, Add Folder. A second here. Some network connectivity issues, apparently. Let's try that again. Let's just go in demo. I can go New Feed, paste in the URL for those search results, and add that feed in. And why isn't that working? Well, it's not updating for some reason. But here's an example of a previous custom search that I entered. So I entered some search results for installation and help, and it returned back the results for searching. So again, here's where GoDaddy kind of pops up on the top, and I see the different results. And so it provides a nice way where I can go through and subscribe to content through my Community Server system. So there's particular information I want to watch for. If I want to watch for new blog posts by a particular user, this is a nice way where I can add favorites into the system very easily. We also support favorites on user profile, but this is kind of a cool way that I can easily track information that I'm really interested in. So as far as RSS goes, obviously we haven't changed our icons yet to the new and improved RSS logo that everyone's using. But we've done a lot with RSS within Community Server. So not only from a search point of view, but also when you look at it from, if I go into forums, and I click on any discussion forum, I can scroll down to the bottom. There's going to be RSS feeds for any forum. So I can watch threads. I can subscribe to the threads in a particular forum. I'm not even showing blogs because it's more than obvious that we support blogs or RSS for blogs. I can pick a thread, and let's say I want to add this thread to an RSS reader. I can grab the RSS feed for this thread as well and subscribe to it. And so we support RSS throughout the entire platform, whether it comes to files, forum discussions, you name it. You're going to find RSS everywhere. And if you can't find it, you can probably build up a custom search syntax or custom search result to pull back or create a custom feed for the content that you're looking for. Aggregation. So I've got my little mashed potatoes bag here with the little RSS logo that you can see on the bottom. We're going to do a lot more with this over the coming months. We're seeing a huge demand from a lot of our commercial customers that want to take, well, let me step back. Building a community app 3 or 4 years ago was really, really difficult. You had a lot of technology problems. You had a lot of kind of issues you had to solve. You had to write a lot of code yourself. Putting up a community site today is pretty darn easy. There's a lot of great tools out there. I hope you find that Community Server makes one of the better ones, but putting up a community application is pretty easy. What we're seeing now, at least from our demand from our customers, is they're wanting to build more of these mashup style sites. Well, they're taking a lot of different information from a variety of locations and bringing them together in an interesting way. A great example of that is dig.com. I think dig.com is a great example of building a mashup site where it's almost like a reverse blog. Our goal from a platform point of view is, we don't want to build dig.com, but we want to build the tools that enable someone else to build the next dig.com. So a lot of the type of functionality that you'd find there where you can mash up RSS feeds, where you take a lot of different information, put it together in an interesting way and allow users to kind of collaborate and comment and share and bubble up interesting data is going to be supported in the platform. Our first step with that was obviously with our RSS roller. This is a way that you can easily take a variety of different feeds, as I showed earlier, aggregate those together. Right now, the only thing we're going to allow you to do is show the number of comments on there. What you're going to see in the near future is a way where users can come in and rate these individual post entries and allow things to kind of bubble up and resort based on how the audience perceives the information versus instead of how just the software is posting the information. So there's a lot of great things happening there. We also then, of course, support resyndication of a lot of this content. You can turn that functionality off, but what it means is, again, I can create a custom blog role and resyndicate all that content together in a new and interesting way. We'll actually suck down all the content for that new RSS feed for you. If you click through on a particular entry, it will still take you to the originator, so whoever originated the content. But it does provide some great tools for easily enabling some of that type of functionality. Control panel. I picked a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So instead of typing a bunch of words on my slides, I thought I'd use pictures. This is overly complex. This is a little bit scary. Our control panel is hopefully not this scary. But what we have done is we've built a pretty rich system for managing the application behind the scenes. So I can click on the control panel. This is kind of the dashboard where I can manage all the blogs that I have permissions to, all the photos, any forums tools, any quick shortcuts I need to get to. So I can go to, for example, my blogs. I can create new posts from here. I can look at all my content that was added in. So here are all the different entries that have been added into the system. I can edit and view those at any time. I can go into administration as an administrator and come in and manage all of the blogs in the application. So for example, this is for Community Server. We have a nice tree control, so I can group together the different blogs. I can pick a blog, such as the demo blog down here. Click on it. I can then come in and manage all the information, like is it enabled? Do I enable indexing? What are the permissions? So we actually support a really rich permission system that allow users to control what they can and can't do with the system. We've got a ton of corporate customers that use our software for internal blogging that need really fine-grained permissions to control who can see what. Additionally, the functionality like blog by email, is it enabled or not? I'll show you how that works in just a second. I'm actually going to go back here real quick to my blogs, because this takes a moment to go through. And let's change blogs. Let's pick the demo blog, and let's go view that particular blog entry. So this is a private blog that we've created. So there's no entries in here now. I'm going to go ahead and show you this now, because it takes about 5 minutes to actually get processed. So I can create a new entry through the web, but I can also create a new post by email. And a blog entry from MIX06. Hello there. This is a blog post from email. And we'll send that off. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. So just remember that we did that. We'll come back there in a minute. So going back to the control panel, going back to the administration section, I can manage blogs through there. I can manage my photos. There's quota management for, how many photos can a particular user, how much disk quota is a user given? Again, based on their permissions, their roles they belong to. All kinds of file management. So I can go in and manage folders in the system. I can find individual files. I'm not going to show it here, but we can do download reporting. So you can set it up so that any file that's downloaded, you can tell it that in order for someone to download this file, they have to be signed in. And then as a marketer, I can come back and say, show me all the users that downloaded this particular file. So there's a lot of kind of fine-grained control there. From the forums point of view, again, kind of same thing where I have a tree-based UI where I can manage all the different forums in the system. So for example, we've got gold support forums that we sell access to. And again, I just have a lot of different settings on here for controlling, what permissions you have, what are the admin permissions. Is this set up as a mailing list? So can I send and receive emails to this forum? In this particular case, it is. So for our customers that have permissions to this forum, they can actually send an email to this alias and ask questions via email without ever having to go to the web. So it's really convenient. And users who don't have permissions, their email gets rejected. So settings for our reader, so coming in and managing all the different feeds that are subscribed to. There we go. Membership, so managing the members of the system. I can come in and say, oh, let's find user Scott, and I'm getting some UI weirdness here because I'm compressed on the screen. But it will actually search through all the users who have the username or email that has Scott included in it. And then I can see there's a user. I can click on that user. I can reset their password. I can add them to roles. I can view their posts. I can drill into a user. I can then go in and manage things like, hey, what are their permissions? What are all their different settings? I can reset and change those. So a lot of nice permissions there. All the site settings. So for example, all I want to do is run a forums application. This is where I can go in and easily just disable the applications that I'm not interested in. A ton of other stuff in there I'm not really going to get into. There's some reports that are built in, some system tools. So for example, if you wanted to see all the events that are occurring in the app, there's an event log viewer where applications that build on top of community server can kind of publish to tell the system what's happening. So if at any point you're trying to debug it or figure out what went wrong, there's some easy ways to do that. I want to show off our anti-spam tools briefly. We've done a lot of work here to make it really easy for users, the administrator, to control the spam that comes in the system. So if I go to Manage Spam Blocker, our spam blocker works on a scoring system where we come with 4 predefined rules, but you can plug in your own rules as well. So we'll do things like, oh, we'll scan for bad words. We have a bad word list we check. We can scan for forbidden words. We can scan for how many times a particular IP has been used. Scan for how many times a link has been, or how many times a link is used within an entry. And this will work across blog comments, blog entries, forums, photos, files, you name it. It will assign scores, essentially, to any incoming content. And if content falls below the score threshold, it'll get approved. If it's above the threshold but below the delete threshold, it will get put in a moderation queue where a user has to approve it before it goes live. If it's above the auto-delete threshold, I mean, let's say you're getting spammed like crazy, it will automatically delete those entries for you. And you'll just see records in your event logs that says, hey, we've been deleting these particular entries for you because they were marked as spam. So here's the example where I was going to show blogging by email. I already wrote the email and sent it. Let's actually go see if it's published now. Blogging by email is just really a nice piece of functionality. The reason is that there's nothing to explain. Everyone understands email. I mean, anyone can blog by email. And the nice thing about it is that you automatically get some nice behaviors, such as, so here's my entry. So there's my blog entry that I did via email. The nice thing about doing this via email is, oh, guess what? I can now go over to my drafts folder in Outlook, or my sent items, rather. And there's some examples. There we go. So there's the entry I did. I can go back and find that entry later. I can use all the spell checking and rich formatting that I find in email. I'm not limited to Outlook. I can use Hotmail, Yahoo, Gmail, whatever. But again, it provides a nice way to do blog entries. The reason I like it is I can be on the plane after I leave this particular talk, at 30,000 feet, writing blog entries via email that are going to get posted to the community server later. So it makes for kind of a nice, easy way to use the application. Some of the other things, some of the other gateway functionality. So from a more technical point of view, if people want to use tools like Outlook Express to read and post messages, we support that as well. So there's an example talking to communityserver.org using Outlook Express to read and post to the forums. It honors all the permissions, meaning that I log in using my same username and password that I use on the website through an NTP. We also have an FTP server for moving files around that uses community server username and passwords for managing permissions that way as well. So a lot of different gateways that we've built. We've also got the email gateway, which what's nice there is that I can read a message and I can, let's say, subscribe to an email within community server or subscribe to a forum. It will actually send out emails when new entries are made. I'll receive that email in Outlook or Yahoo or Gmail or whatever mail system I'm using, and I can read it. That's no big deal. I mean, anyone can do that. What's cool, though, is I can read the email. I can then click reply, type out my response, and send that back out, and it will parse that email. Community server will parse the email contents and add it back as a post into the forum. And so what kind of our vision was here was, hey, let's remove all the technology barriers. Let's build a community platform that allows you to interact however you want to interact, whether it's sitting in your Outlook inbox, whether it's using a tool like Outlook Express, or whether it's using a really rich web interface provided to us through ASP.NET. It really shouldn't matter. So that's it. Just in summary, community server, we've really the right way to think about it. It's not a portal application. The way we like to position community server, it's a platform. It's not a portal that you kind of build on top of, but rather it's a platform for enabling community applications. It does a lot of interesting things. Again, you can turn on and off a lot of functionality. We like to think of it as a best-of-breed .NET application. It showcases a lot of best practices for how you should think about writing .NET apps. The proof is in the pudding. I mean, if you look at the type of performance metrics we can get out of the system for high-scale apps like blogs.mst.com or weblogs.asp.net or forums.xbox.com running on a minimal amount of servers, I mean, there's some really good design practices in there that you can lift out of the code as well. There's both Express and commercial editions available. The way we actually market community server is the Express edition is free. It includes unlimited blogs, unlimited forums, unlimited photos. It has restrictions on files and a few other areas. The things that we then sell we sell things like the email gateway or the NNTP gateway or single sign-on authentication modules. So some really flexible licensing options. And we do a lot of design work with the community, where you'll find that if you go to communityserver.org, There's constantly members from the development team kind of participating there and helping our customers answer their questions and getting them to use and adopt the platform. So that's an hour and 15-minute tour of building an interactive community-based application on ASP.NET. I hope you've enjoyed the session. If there's any questions, again, my email address is rhoward@telligent.com. I'd love to hear from you all. If there's any questions, we can take that now, or we can go ahead and wrap up.
I noticed in looking at the XML that the RSS generates, you're not using XHTML to encode the actual date, the content in the items. So it's not well formed. It's not specifically well formed XML because you're escaping all the XML characters in the comments. Is there a reason why you did that?
I'm sure there is. Off the top of my head, I wouldn't know. I'd probably have to ask someone from our development team for what the reasoning on that is. If you just shoot me an email, I can let you know. And if that's a common issue, we can definitely do a blog entry about it on our site and let people know kind of why we made that decision.
And can you also explain what the add-in architecture is, if there is one?
Yeah, I didn't really talk about it a lot. The add-in architecture is Community Server uses an eventing-based model. So there's events that fire throughout the use of the application when you create blog posts, when you create new entries. Anytime a message is being processed, there's lots of events that fire. So we have what's called a CS module eventing model, where you can build what's called a module, plug it into Community Server, and it can listen to and react to those events. So it can do, for example, we built a module that whenever a post is rendered, it will render out links to dig that post or Reddit that post or do a number of different things. So there's a number of ways you can participate. If you go to docs.communityserver.org, there's some documentation up there about it. That's a great question. The way we deal with data binding is, in just about every case, we will connect to the database using a data reader. We'll then pull out the data. We'll inflate custom object types, like we'll create a post object, and we'll add those posts into either a post collection, which usually derives from like array list, and then we'll bind the array list to a one of the data bound controls for ASP.NET. It's driven in the server controls. So if you were to open up our weblogs post control, that's where all the data binding occurs to actually render out the posts that have been bound to it. So what's nice about that is you can pass that control basically a populated list of posts, and it will know how to process it. Whether it doesn't really matter where it comes from. Okay. I've been told to take other questions off to the side to transition to the next speaker. So I will wrap up real quickly, and if there's any questions, we'll be out in the hall.